Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. I am your host, Angie Grant. And here in this podcast, we talk all about the challenges of raising kids in general, but more specifically, we talk about strategies to help parents who are raising kids who are dealing with exceptional behavior challenges, emotional challenges, and kids we are really struggling to connect with. So, for today's episode, I want to start off by saying there might be a bit of a trigger warning for you, depending on where you're at in life and things that you've experienced. So, I want to give you a heads up that I will be talking a little bit about suicide in today's episode. And if suicide is something that you are struggling with that's going on in your home, I want to make sure that I don't forget to remind you about the Suicide and Crisis hotline. It's 988. You can text it, you can call it. So I want to make sure that you have that as an available resource. But today I want to talk about it through the lens of parenting because, well, suicide has touched my life for many decades. I want to tell you a bit of a story about my brother and what I have learned about life through him and through my experience being his sister. So, when I was 18, I lost my brother. He took his own life, which forever changed the trajectory of mine. From that moment on, I've been on a relentless pursuit to understand why somebody who I thought that I knew so well could make such a decision to leave this planet. I This happened during my senior year in high school, and that I I already knew that I wanted to go into some type of helping field. I don't know. Perhaps it was the shoulds of life. Perhaps there was something in me that knew. I now know through the lens of human design that I'm on this planet to work with people, to help people break old patterns that aren't serving them anymore. Of course, I didn't know that then. I just felt called to help in some way. My initial plan was to, I don't know, be a teacher or be a school psychologist. That's what seemed safe and comfortable to me. And then, as I said, during my senior year, I lost my brother. And from that moment on, I dove deep into understanding the psychology behind suicide. My research project during my undergrad was all about that topic and trying to understand what what possibly could have gone wrong or what we missed. When we were growing up, we lived with mom and dad, and when we were young, mom left, and so then it was dad raising us. We were pretty young at that point, and so I couldn't have possibly have seen things through my brother's eyes. I only knew what I had experienced. And as a young adult trying to understand what we had experienced and what that looked like, I really struggled to understand how two kids could go through the same experience and handle it so very differently. I knew through our teenage years that he was angry, and I loved him to death, but I also knew that he had a short fuse, and I didn't. We had experienced the same things when we were younger, yet our perception of what happened in our home, our reaction to the changes in our relationships were so incredibly different. And I mean, you could easily chalk it up to, boys being different than girls, or the firstborn being different than the secondborn, or, you know, whatever other developmental lens that you'd like to look at it through, but it still never quite made sense to me. So, no shocker, probably, when I started to learn human design and really started to understand myself and how I process information, how I relate with others, how I pick up on other people's emotional energy. When I really started to understand me, it made so much more sense to me about why I processed what had happened when we were younger. It made so much more sense to me why I processed it the way that I did. That I process things internally, that I am designed to be sensitive to the needs of others. I am a leader. It is part of my energy to lead and to be highly sensitive to the needs of others, oftentimes to my own detriment, my own sacrifice. And that's something that I'm working on changing in me and shifting to the higher frequency. But there's so many pieces of my design that perhaps created space for me to process what had happened in a different way. But as I started to understand me, I realized that I needed to understand my brother at a much, much deeper level through a different lens. And so I decided that I wanted to walk you through this, through my understanding about his experience, I guess, to have a greater understanding as parents, but also because I really want to highlight why I find human design a necessary parenting tool. Because although I don't blame anybody for what happened with my brother, I can't help but wonder if my parents knew what he needed energetically and knew how to build up his resiliency and understood those mistaken motivations that he was displaying, I have to wonder if they knew what he needed, would the outcome have changed? I, of course, then also realized that I had to go through the pain that I went through to help light a fire under me to share with you, to help you gain the tools that you need with your kids. And my hope in as you listen to this episode is that you take the time to really truly understand your kids, to understand their unmet needs, because as humans, we all have them. We all have unmet needs because nobody else on this planet knows what the heck we need, or at least not at the deepest level that we really can understand when we start to see our kids through the lens of human design. I feel that strongly about it, that when we can't see what our kids need, we're just guessing, or we're parenting through our own lens, which is not our kids. Our needs and what we see as our kids' needs, we're often missing the mark. So, my brother, he's a generator type. Much as I am, I'm also a generator type. His configuration is a bit different than mine. He has what we would call a split. I'm a single definition. So when we have a single definition, that means that all of our energy flows and we can feel a bit complete on our own. We don't feel this wanting for somebody else to bridge our split. But my brother did. He felt this deep need energetically to have somebody there to bridge his split. And at that very beginning, simplest level in understanding his split, it makes me wonder, is, is that one piece of the puzzle about why a divorce was so much more impactful to him than it was to me? And not that the divorce wasn't impactful, but it didn't create this deep, deep pain that I couldn't get past. So then I dug in a little bit deeper to understand perhaps some other pieces to his design that might help explain where things might have been harder for him or more challenging, or maybe where he may have gotten stuck in the shadows a bit more. As I started to dig into his design, a couple of other things really stood out to me. Some of these are related to his energetic needs, and some of them I think are key signals about potential mistaken motivations and key signals about potential resiliency key struggles. So the first one being that um, he, in his design, he has the channel for stubbornness. It's also called the channel of the fighter, I believe. And in this channel, people who have this energy defined in their chart have this energy to be able to fight the good fight. However, when not in a high energy, that fight can be ugly and it can be reactive and it can be really problematic in relationships. And I know that I saw this energy in the negative, on the negative frequency as I was growing up. And I would always wonder, why such a big reaction to things? Well, now I know. He had that energy in him, but it wasn't channeled appropriately. That exact same energy has this beautiful gift to be able to fight for good, to be an amazing advocate. But he didn't know that, and neither did his parents. Instead, that energy felt like friction, like fighting, like arguing, but they didn't know. Imagine if they did. Some other things in his design, when I started to dig into the fear gates, I found some really interesting things here too. There are several different fear gates that are highlighted in his chart that can create, when in the negative or lower frequency, can create this sense of inadequacy, of not being good enough, not being enough. Imagine having a child who inside they're feeling incomplete because they have a split, and inside they're feeling like they're not good enough, like they don't know enough, like they're not well behaved enough, how that can really influence the way that a child feels about themselves. I know growing up, it was easy for me to be the people pleaser. It was easy for me to be the well-behaved one, and my brother wasn't. I remember as a young kid, him getting feedback about being not a good listener, not well-behaved. And I remember oftentimes myself getting feedback that I was. In me, it created a people pleaser, right? To my own detriment often. And it's something that I'm still working through. But in him, that same dynamic of trying to fit our kids into a box could have easily created this sense of not being good enough, not being the good kid, which can then lead to struggles with the resiliency keys of struggling with feeling valued for who you are, feeling loved for who you are, feeling safe to be your authentic self. A few other things that I noted as I was going through his chart, and I want to point out that as I'm sharing these things, every element in our design has the potential for the low frequency and the high frequency, every part, whether we're talking about type or profile or individual gates or centers, they all have the potential for low and high frequency. But what I saw, what I experienced was more of that low frequency and struggling to fit in and struggling to find his place. And as parents, when we just see the surface, just see the behaviors on the outside, and we're not really looking underneath at what energetically is creating that sense of not feeling good enough, what underneath the surface is creating this space of not feeling safe or okay to be who our kids are, that's what fuels challenges with those resiliency keys. A few other things that really, really stood out to me are his life's work. It's called the left angle cross of the alpha. He was on this planet to be the leader, to be a strong, strong leader. Not only was his profile a 6'2", which comes with that role model embodiment, but the left angle cross of the alpha is that energy of the leader. He had that in him, and he didn't have a great outlet for it to come out. Like I said, when we as kids experienced a divorce in our home, he took that and pent up all that anger. I took that and probably also pent up that anger, but in such a different way. His came out exploding again and again and again through that energy of the the channel of the stubbornness, or the that energy that comes with the left angle cross of the alpha, right? His his anger came out of him through these channels of frustration and anger. Mine came out in trying to figure out how to be as well behaved as I could. Neither is good or bad, neither is right or wrong, but for him, it it ended tragically for him. His story ended abruptly, and he didn't have a chance to reclaim his story, to rewrite it. A few other things that I noted in his chart that, again, had his parents known that this was such a deep need, perhaps they could have taken a different angle or a different approach. But one of the key fears that really stood out for me was that one of the fears in his design, it's gate 37, but it's uh, it's it's the gate of friendship and family. But on the lower frequency side, it's this fear of traditions being broken. And I can just imagine, for somebody who has that gate defined in their chart, how the pure act of a divorce, of a family separating, could create such an internal energetic stress that could be so hard for a kiddo who feels misunderstood, who feels like they're not good enough. It could be so incredibly hard for a kiddo to experience that. And I'm not saying that when, two parents are together and they notice that their child has that gate highlighted in their chart, that they shouldn't divorce or they shouldn't split up, but there's so many other ways to do it. And there are ways to do it where the parents are on the same page together and communicating and supporting their kids and putting the kids' needs first. It's not easy to do. And I know that I didn't know these things when I too went through my own divorce. I didn't know what in the heck was in my kids' charts. But that's the point, right? Once we know that there's a way to see what our kids need, then we get to choose to do something about it. Once we know that our kids aren't just a, a duplicate of us, right? Our kids are not just a split of mom and dad, and there's some kind of mishmash of the two. No, our kids are this unique, very unique configuration of their energetic needs, which are not yours. They might have some similarities to you, but your kids are not you. They have their own purpose on this planet. They have their own energetic needs, and they have their own potential for greatness and their own potential to struggle. But when we know what their roadmap is, it gives us a place to start. It gives us a place to help to rewrite their story, or to veer their story in a way that's empowering for them. Because when I look back at these elements about my brother's chart and so many other details that I found as I was really trying to understand, I realized that his potential to be successful, to work through things in a healthier way, maybe could have been helped with a strong, aligned foundation with family and closeness. He needed closeness more than anything else in the world. It's a huge part of his design. That he also needed support for his potential, because what came out of him were these behaviors of the alpha, right? Like him trying to be in charge and him trying to dominate, him trying to maybe step in to a caregiver role as a young child, that he was designed to be stubborn. It is in his chart. But awareness of his potential, that stubbornness didn't have to be a problem. it had the potential to be funneled into something powerful. That energy of the alpha didn't have to be a problem. It again could have been funneled or had the potential to be funneled into a beautiful leadership quality. Understanding that somebody with a configuration like my brother's is more likely to display the mistaken motivation of inadequacy, for example, which for him, I believe, looked like him quitting, not trying. He was incredibly intelligent, but school was not his jam. And I think now that I know what I know, I think that inadequacy was a way to perhaps get attention, to work towards that closeness that he energetically so desperately wanted. I also think that there were many parts of his design that were more likely to engage in the mistaken motivation of power, right? He has the design of a leader, which to a parent, I'm sure can feel incredibly overpowering, right? And I also see many elements in his design that he he was more likely to engage in the stick motivation of attention as well. That he he would often, well, one, his throat center is connected to his G center and nothing else. So he didn't have any motors to his throat and just more likely to talk to gain attention is something that I saw over and over and over again when I was a kid. But when we know these things, I know that I've said this over and over again, but I want the point to be so strong that I don't know if things could have changed in the path for my brother, but I know that I experienced what I experienced to help you to consider looking through your or looking at your kids through their design to really, really see what they need, to break old patterns of the ways that you've been parenting. Because if things aren't changing with behaviors with your kiddo, or if if even worse, if you continue to use the same behavior strategies and perhaps behaviors are getting better, but at the cost of your child's sense of self-worth, their sense of authenticity, their sense of feeling safe or okay to be who they are, then I really encourage you, invite you to look at your child through a different lens. We see it happen time and time again, right? We can change behaviors with stricter behavior management strategies, right? We can change somebody's behavior through punishment, through shame, through repeated yelling, right? Kids will stop engaging in behaviors just to get you to stop yelling. But what if that behavior was driven because they have this energy to be a leader and they're trying to figure it out? They're not trying to ruin your day. They're not trying to overpower you. But what if they're just trying to figure out how to be a leader? And they keep missing the mark because they don't have the right guidance that sees them, that sees what they need. As one simple little example, when we can see our kids, we can guide them, we can be stewards to their energy to help them flourish into whatever they were supposed to be. So I thank you for going on this journey with me. It definitely wasn't easy sharing this with you because it is so incredibly personal to me. But I felt so compelled to share this story with you, not for sympathy by any means. This has been my story for quite some time now, 27 years, I think. I don't know. My math is rough right now, but this has been part of my story for so long. And I needed to understand, and I think that this is why I needed to understand so that I could help you to consider taking a step back, taking a pause, and really deciding that you're ready to understand your kids and you're ready to start lifting them up to fulfill their potential. Because when we look around us, when we look at what's happening with our kids, this this Um, Tragedy isn't going to go away. We have to meet our kids where they're at. We have to start seeing them and not getting so wrapped up in what we've got going on. Because, and I know it's easy to look back, right? Like we could look back and say, like, well, our parents weren't paying that much attention to us. Yeah, they probably weren't. And that doesn't make it okay, for one. And for two, our kids need different than we needed. And we needed different than our parents needed, right? Things are changing energetically on a much bigger scale than we could ever imagine. But our kids need us to be present. Our kids need us to see them. And our kids need us to help lift them up. So again, I don't want to lose sight that this was a challenging topic. Um, if you or someone you love is struggling with the thought of suicidality or taking your own life, please, please, please use the 988 suicide and crisis line, reach out to a counselor. And although suicide is not my area of focus, there's so many tools in my tool belt that I have to help you create a new story, shed the old story that's been holding you back, shed that story that you're not good enough, that you're not valuable enough, that you're not lovable enough. The tools that I use with my clients are so incredibly powerful to help you unravel that story and create a new, more empowering story. So that is all for this episode. And thank you again for listening, for trusting my story, and we will talk soon.